Fanfic Corner, presented by Jennifer. Not Another Day, Part 1. It had been around a month since the kid joined him on Tantiss. The first day they brought her in, he was supposedly unconscious. He had the faintest memory of anything happening to him during that week. With all the experiments, torture, and drugging, it was an accomplishment to speak a full sentence without slurring or stopping in the middle to regain his train of thought. After Omega's arrival, the torture had thankfully stopped. But that was only because Hemlock no longer needed to interrogate him for information on Clone Force 99's whereabouts. Crosshair would feel a twinge of guilt when Omega was brought back to her cell day after day. Though she was rather annoyingly optimistic the majority of the time, when she didn't think he noticed, the sniper slowly watched as her smile started to vanish as time passed. Her hope of being rescued by her brothers dwindling. She never dared admit it aloud, but Crosshair could tell. Speaking of the kid, the sniper lifted his gaze as two troopers dragged Hemlock's new bargaining chip down the hall. Omega no longer tried to resist. Like him, she had learned the hard way. She had to learn the hard way. "Lights out," the trooper told her. The trooper to her left barked as he shoved her into the tiny excuse for a cell. Crosshair, grinding his teeth together, forced himself to keep quiet, sustaining a sardonistic remark with an icy glare as the two troopers left. He watched as Omega lugged herself over to one corner of her cage, pressing her forehead against the metal bars as she took a deep breaths with closed eyes. "What was it this time? More blood samples?" Crosshair asked, breaking the silence. He cautiously glanced over her limp form, but it was hard to recognize any external damage due to the long-sleeved Imperial uniform. Omega turned her head, looking at him the best she could through the bars between them. "No, Dr. Hemlock said Naliste failed to complete her task. I don't remember much after that. All I felt was burning, and then nothing." Such words should never have come out of her mouth. Crosshair's fists clenched. His nails dug into the skin from the pressure. How could Hemlock sit through torturing a literal child without feeling any remorse or sense of wrongness? But Before the droid came in, Omega continued, I heard one of the troopers saying 3 of their scouts didn't report back from their patrol. Crosshair raised a brow. How is this information important? Omega scooted closer, bringing her voice down a tad lower. It has to be them. I know it's them. Crosshair ran a hand down his face, shaking his head. Not this again. How many times did he have to remind her? Omega, it's not them. Why can't you accept they've given up? They aren't coming for us. But it has to. This whole place is crawling with Imperials. How do 3 just happen to go missing on a simple patrol? Just give up on the idea. He didn't need false hope. He had spent too many days, weeks, months longing for his brothers to break through into the facility and find him unknowingly. No, Omega said firmly. I know they're out there, searching. I can feel it. Every time she shut her eyes, she could picture her brothers smiling back at her. The fond memories would act as a coping mechanism during the roughest days, especially the first day on Tantiss. You're only setting yourself up for disappointment, kid, Crosshair muttered, leaning his head back. The sooner you realize we aren't getting out of here, the better. Omega curled in on herself, resting her chin on her knees. I'm not giving up, Crosshair. Neither should you. The Empire had truly broken her brother's spirit. She couldn't imagine the horrors he went through. For months. Alone. No wonder he felt so defeated. They had only begun to start looking for him not too long ago. She wished they had started sooner. Then perhaps they would all be on the Marauder, or on Pablu, enjoying the island's paradise. With Tech. I know you're out there, Hunter. I know you're searching for us. I promise to hang in a little longer. Omega held on to the feeling of Hunter's warm embrace and his calming voice as he would brush his fingers through her thick hair. Smiling, she settled down and prepped for another night of uncomfortable sleep. Crosshair woke to the sound of alarms blaring, raising a hand to shield his eyes from the sudden flash of red light that danced vividly in the darkness. He jolted up from his cot, standing at attention. What the? Crosshair? Omega's voice trembled, snapping the sniper's attention to her. Someone's coming. She backed into the corner closest to him, as if seeking comfort, despite being separated by the race shield and a barrier wall. She let out a small gasp when a new presence joined them. In the midst of the chaotic alarms, a single dark figure stared directly at the 2 clones, hands clasped behind his back as a group of stormtroopers lined up behind him. Hemlock stepped forward, inches away from Crosshair's cell. It appears your squad has come for you. Those words caused Crosshair's world to slow. Omega was right. I knew it, Omega whispered almost to herself in disbelief, although she never actually given up on the thought that they would come. This time, it was real. They were here. Hemlock hummed a pitiful tune, shaking his head slightly at her excitement. Yes, well, too bad neither of you will be here to see them. Crosshair and Omega's eyes met before their connection was ripped apart. Troopers swarmed Omega's cell, tearing her away from the confined space. The sniper called out to her, fighting against the arms grabbing his own as his hands were now useless. Crosshair! Omega screeched as she meticulously broke free from her captors as they failed to lug her up the cell stairs, giving her the chance to run straight into his chest. Crosshair, we have to stick together. None of that. Hemlock was quick to take the young clone by the shoulder, squeezing it harshly. I have one more thing I need from you. He stared down at Omega with an evil grin, ignoring her daggered eyes glaring up at him. Take her to the lab, he ordered, patting the girl on the head as he sent her off. No, not when they were so close. Hunter and the others were here, at the base. All they needed was a little more time. Before he could react, Omega was ushered away in the blink of an eye. Crosshair could do nothing but stand there at her as her screams for help grew further away. After a numb second of gathering what had just happened, he met Hemlock's subtle smile of achievement with a look that could kill. Harm one hair on her head, and I'll make sure you never see the light of day again. Hemlock chuckled, inhaling and exhaling before explaining in harsh tones, You aren't in the position to be making threats, Crosshair. The doctor clasped his hands behind his back in an orderly manner. Don't worry, you'll be decommissioned shortly after. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have business to attend to. Crosshair's heart thumped in his chest. Those words hadn't been said directly to him since Camino. Decommissioned. Terminated. Killed. All words owed the same meaning. Move it! The trooper behind him pressed the tip of his blaster between the sniper's shoulder blades, pushing him forward. Crosshair sent him a glare, but complied. He would find a way out. He wouldn't mess his chance up, not like the last time. He would be leaving with his brothers and Omega. That was a promise. Omega dragged her feet, hoping to slow the trip to the sterilized, cold, white lab. Oh, how she loathed that place. Growing up in a secluded one was bad, but here she was constantly being prodded at every second of the day, like she wasn't even a person. She had come to accept that the Empire didn't see her, clones, as people. In their eyes, they were nothing more but property to be tampered with. The guards frustratingly pulled her along, despite her efforts. By the time they reached the large doors, Hemlock had caught up. Omega tried to stand tall with a stoic expression as the cylindrical doors approached, dismissing his troops with the flick of a hand. Now, no need for any of that. Hemlock patted the small blaster still at his hip. Either you follow my instructions and this will all be over soon, or I can end it here and now. He carefully took the weapon off his belt, handling it with care as he shoved the head of the blaster in the center of the clone's forehead. I suggest the first option, he whispered coldly. Omega jerked her head to the right, refusing to show any signs of fear. I'm not scared of you, she said, meeting his cold eyes. My brothers are here, and they're going to destroy everything you've built. Hemlock's brow furrowed. For a split second, Omega thought he was concerned, shaken by her threat, until the doctor lunged at her, wrapping an arm around her neck and pressing the tip of the blaster to her temple, while his other hand covered the lower half of her face as he pushed himself against the wall, keeping her close to him. Don't make a sound or I'll blast your brains out, Hemlock whispered into her ear, his hot breath causing the hair on the back of her neck to stand. Omega craned her head to the best she could to see what had provoked such a sudden, fearful reaction from this emotionless doctor. That's when she heard it. The unmistakable sound of Hunter barking orders, Wrecker's grunts, Echo and Captain Rex accompanied by other voices she didn't know. They were right there. Not a word, Hemlock reminded, pressing the blaster deeper into her head as if she couldn't already feel the cold tip. Omega fought the urge to bite down on the hand which prevented her from communicating with her brothers. But that would most likely lead to a far worse outcome for both of them. Instead, she found her hand drifting towards the wall and the tip of her finger brushing against the metal. Omega thought back to her lessons with Tech. The countless hours spent drilling codes, plans, and signals into her head. At the time, she found the constant quizzing and listening tedious, but now her life depended on it. Her finger gently tapped in a recognizable pattern. Of course, it was so quiet that it could have been mistaken as a leaky pipe. But that's all she needed. Now, all she could do was wait and hope her plea for help was heard. Hunter came to a sudden halt, almost sending Wrecker crashing into him. His senses picked up on a familiar sound in the distance. Their updated distress signal. Omega. "You okay, Sarge?" Wrecker asked, lightly patting his back to shake him from his thoughts. "What's wrong? Are we going the wrong way?" Hunter whipped around and tried to pinpoint the direction the signal was echoing from. His gaze drifted to the longest hallway, the one leading to the labs. "Hunter, what is it?" Echo caught onto his sergeant's odd behavior. He would never have frozen in such a dire situation unless he was sure of something. Something important. "I know where Omega is," he breathed, staring down the tunnel that held the answer to what he and the rest of the batch had been searching for. Months of endless hunting, late-night calls, trying to gather any useful information. Now, here they were, so close. Echo rested a hand on Hunter's shoulder, nudging him in the direction he was looking. "Go on. Wrecker and Rex will continue to the brig. I'll make sure no one interferes here." The ARC trooper knew this was a personal matter between Hemlock and Hunter, assuming that's who was waiting on the other end. Hunter needed to do this. Alone. "Right." Hunter nodded, zeroing in once more. "Hopefully this will all soon come to an end. We're leaving this place with Omega and with Crosshair." "Wouldn't think of it any other way," the ARC agreed. "Now, go. Omega's been waiting for you for a long time." Crosshair kept his eyes low as he was led down an elaborate hallway. He had walked it many times before, having memorized the path like the back of his hand. Every time they passed by a storage closet where Crosshair knew his armor, his sniper, and Omega's bow was being kept. He would catch a glimpse of his old weapon for a few seconds, a friendly reminder of who he once was. "Straight ahead," the stormtrooper commanded, turning to his fellow guard. "Last time will ever be his personal escort," he retorted. "I think I enjoy your company," Crosshair snarled, his signature grimace ever so present. "Watch it, clone," the second trooper shoved him roughly. "You should know your place. Your breed is being phased out, making room for actual soldiers. I'd watch who you're talking to." Crosshair turned, ripping his arms out of the loose grasp the trooper had on him. His body felt like it was on autopilot. For once, he knew exactly what he was doing. Tuning out the shouting, his hands found the blaster hanging off one of the guard's belts. His hands molded to the weapon, finding its place on instinct. He wasted no time firing a shot into both troopers. watching their bodies fall to the ground with a thud. He didn't spare them one more glance as he immediately ran to the supply closet. There you are. He picked up his sniper rifle, running a hand over the metal body. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was back to his normal self. After a moment of relish in his refound self, he snapped back to the present. He had a mission. He quickly threw his armor on, acknowledging the new paint job it needed before grabbing Omega's bow, just in case. He exited the room knowing where Hemlock took the kid, and what he was planning on doing. He only hoped he wasn't too late. Omega felt the tension leave Hemlock as he lowered his hand upon hearing the footsteps growing further away. Omega's heart dropped. The hope she was holding out, hope that she would be found, taken away from the horrors of Tantiss, was now gone. Hemlock chuckled, dropping his blaster. See, they don't care about you, Omega. It's time to go now. Omega sniffed, refusing to believe the doctor's horrible lies. She would just have to wait a little longer. She had done it before. What's a bit more? Hemlock brought her into the lab she was in the other day. He strapped her to a chair sitting in the center of the room, medical equipment surrounding it in every way. If he couldn't have the girl, then he had no choice but to extract her DNA himself. Nalase had mentioned it was the last of its kind. Once he had what he needed, there was no reason to keep her around. She caused him nothing but trouble. He didn't know what the Kaminoan saw in her. She was nothing special. She was a defective clone, a worthless failed experiment. Perhaps her genetic code would be of use to him. What are you doing? Omega asked, squirming as Hemlock hooked an IV to her arm, missing her vein 3 times as he fumbled with his shaking hands. Quiet, Hemlock shouted, his eyes full of rage as he finally managed to secure the IV. Omega winced. Her arm burned like fire as liquid entered her body. She knew it was meant to numb her instead of its intended purpose. Don't stress, dear Omega. You'll soon cease to remember all of this. You'll no longer feel any pain, I assure. Hemlock cradled her head in his hand, using his thumb to swipe away a tear that trickled down her pale face. Omega hated how she tried to imagine Hunter saying those words. Hunter's hand comforting her in the moment. Hey! An accented voice roared. The door slid open in one loud swoosh. Get away from her! The sound of a blaster clicked. Hemlock froze. No, not now. He attempted to reach for his own blaster as discreetly as he could, but didn't get further than an inch before a shot made connection with his shoulder. Hemlock let out a yelp, snatching a syringe with his good arm. Don't you dare, Hunter snarled, taking a step forward. I'll say this once and once only. The sergeant was shaking beyond composure. Seeing the man who took Omega right before his very eyes fueled him with enough anger for a lifetime. Now, he was the only thing that stood between him and his kid. Step away from her. Hemlock breathed heavily, gripping his hand around the top of the chair Omega was strapped to. You're not in control, Hunter, Hemlock said shakily as he stood above Omega, pressing the syringe to her neck. I can end her life with a push of a finger. He let his thumb hover over the top as if to prove his point. You will back down, now, or else I swear I will kill her. Hunter, Omega choked out, trying to lock eyes with his helmeted gaze. She needed to focus on him being here with her. She didn't care what happened next, for better or for worse, as long as he was there. Hunter was scared. He should have taken the shot when he had the chance. Why didn't he? Now, because of him, Omega's life was on the line. Again. The needle scraped along her skin, leaving a red scratch trailing down her throat. He had no other choice. He would have to find another way. He lowered his blaster. I'm unarmed. He rose up carefully, empty hands in the air to back up his surrender. Please, let her go. She's done nothing wrong. She was a kid. She didn't deserve any of this. Hemlock flashed a small smile. Victory was in sight. He had the upper hand now. He had the power over the pathetic sergeant, all because of his attachment to the bang. Hemlock barely felt a thing as gravity pulled him towards the ground, and then nothing. Dr. Hemlock was dead. That was enjoyable, a snake-like voice said with satisfaction and relief. Hunter turned around, his throat closing up as he met his brother's eyes. Crosshair. He couldn't believe it. Hunter, the sniper repeated the name greeting. Don't keep the kid waiting. He jerked his head towards Omega. They could discuss everything later. Thank you, Hunter said quietly before running to Omega. Crosshair watched as he tore his helmet off, ripping away the restraints and tubes confining the kid. He had never seen Hunter so soft before. He wrapped his arms around Omega, running his hands through her curly hair as she sobbed into his shoulder. Hunter's own voice was trembling as he picked her up, holding her close, muttering words of comfort to her. As he drew near, the sniper swore he saw tears in his brother's eyes, something he had never witnessed in his life. Crosshair cleared his throat. We should get going. He swiftly went and fetched Hunter's helmet, handing it to him, with a very slight smile. She never lost faith in you. Hunter broke into a grin. She really is a light in all this darkness, isn't she? He holstered Omega up again as she began slipping, though she hadn't noticed as she had cried herself into exhaustion. Crosshair thought back to their time together. Omega really had been the reason he fought to live. She gave him hope when everyone else made it their mission to deprive him of it. No wonder his brothers loved her so much. He understood it now. Hunter, we need to leave, Echo's voice shouted over the comm channel. Do you have Omega? Hunter picked up without hesitation. Yes, and our other missing person. That's great. Crosshair could hear the sense of relief and even the excitement in the Ark's tone, which was something he wasn't used to hearing. It felt nice, knowing he was wanted. Meet us back at the Marauder in 10. This base is going to blow soon, courtesy of Wrecker. Of course, Hunter sighed, hanging up. It's time to go. Really, I couldn't tell. Crosshair stepped aside. Lead the way. Surprised you don't know the layout. Hunter tilted his head slightly. They didn't exactly give me a tour, you know. Fair enough. Hunter had to admit he missed his brother's humor. The two, plus Omega in Hunter's arms, snuck around the base, careful not to run into any troopers. It was difficult, seeing as how the facility was still on lockdown. Every so often they would have near misses, so close to exposing their existence, but each time they remained lucky. There's the hangar, Hunter whispered. The others are waiting for us. Let's move quickly before... Heavy footsteps marched down the hall. Hunter twisted around. The shadows of a large group of troopers would appear in a few seconds. Thinking fast, he saw a door across from them. Hopefully it wasn't important. They could hide there for the meantime until the troopers passed. Are you serious? Crosshair asked, almost as if reading his mind. You've got a better option? Hunter made a break for it, opening the door and dashing inside. Crosshair followed shortly after. While he sealed the door, Crosshair stood frozen in place, staring at a figure hanging in a glowing green bacca tank in the corner of the room, looking half dead. "Hunter, you're going to want to see this." Hunter carefully set Omega down against the wall before turning around and seeing what had the sniper speechless. "What's the No, it couldn't be."